Hey, Cashflow Ninjas, real quick before we jump into today's episode, I've been asked by many people recently, what has been the one thing that has made all the difference on my journey as a business owner and investor? I started businesses and I've invested in businesses. I've invested in single family real estate, multifamily real estate. I still have a sizable portfolio of multifamily real estate, historic resorts, mobile home parks, oil and gas, life settlements, gold and silver, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. I could go on. But the one thing that has changed the financial trajectory for myself and my family has been infinite banking. Yes, you heard that correctly. That is the number one thing I've done over the past 2 decades that have made the single biggest difference. And it's not even close. Setting up and building out a family banking system using infinite banking has enabled me to create my own financial system. This year, it has allowed me to focus and not pay attention to all the chaos in the global economy and global financial markets. I really don't pay attention to all the noise about tariffs, trade wars, markets violently going down and then going back up, or interest rates skyrocketing and wrecking real estate deals and other alternative investment deals. Do not be beholden to other systems. Create your own system. If you're interested in working with me and my team at Producers Wealth to set up your own banking system or your own business and family banking system, then go to getwealthyforsure.com. That's getwealthyforsure.com. When you go to getwealthyforsure.com, you can request a free copy of my best-selling book, Get Wealthy for Sure. Only pay for shipping. You can also watch all of our presentations and schedule a call to explore infinite banking options with me and my team. You don't have to be powerless amidst the chaos. You too can have a financial strategy that provides certainty, predictability, and clarity. You and your family can also get wealthy for sure. Go to getwealthyforsure.com to start your journey today. The world is going through changes happening at a speed that we have never seen before. This is leading to disruption, chaos, panic, fear, hysteria, and a turbulent economy and marketplace. How do you protect your wealth in a turbulent world? How do you invest for cash flow in alternative assets to escape the rat race in times of uncertainty? How do you decentralize yourself, your family, your community, your business, and your investments to become sovereign and escape the matrix? If you are looking for strategies, tactics, and techniques to escape the rat race and matrix, you are in the right place. My name is MC Laubscher, and this is Cashflow Ninja. This is Cashflow Ninja. I'm MC Laubscher. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode and spending the most valuable resource, your time, once again with me on the show. Everything Cashflow Ninja is at cashflowninja.com. We've got over 1,000 podcast episodes, 4 books, reports, webinars, and much, much more, all at cashflowninja.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the #1 newsletter in the alternative wealth strategy and alternative asset investing space, the Wealth Dojo. You can subscribe to the Wealth Dojo by going to cashflowninja.com/subscribe. I've got a fantastic show for you today. And today we're going to look at how you can invest in a movie and in the movie business and in Hollywood. I'm joined by Josh Clayton, Kirk Martin, and Alec Roth. They're with the Firebrand Media Group. Josh, Kirk, Alec, great to see you guys.
Great to see you. How's it going?
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah, great. I've been looking forward to this conversation. We've had several conversations before the show, so this is going to be a good one if you're listening and watching. But before we dive into our topic for today and the meat of it, can you guys please share a little bit about your background and journey just with my listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our company is Firebrand Media Group, and we're a unique combination of Amarillo, Texas, and Hollywood. So Kirk and I grew up on the same street in Amarillo. It's up in the Panhandle, sort of the middle of nowhere, you might say, and have been cutting grass together, buying apartment buildings, drilling oil and gas wells, all sorts of different ideas and businesses since really the 90s. And working together closely in a lot of different ways. I'm a lawyer and he's a MBA CFO. And, we ended up in the position of our current company through another deal that Kirk and I were a part of called Snap Nurse. We were co-founders of that company and helped it get off the ground. With a little help from COVID, it became $1 billion plus business within 5 years of being founded. And so we were fortunate to make a friend within that company who was also on the board named Mark Brown. And he had written Barbershop with Ice Cube and Two Can Play That Game and How to Be a Player, some early 2000 hits. And he initially got us interested in the movie world. And then we're fortunate enough to meet Alec and his background and everything that he was doing in terms of his capabilities and talents and ambitions was either complementary or very aligned with what we were doing. And so, I let him give you some of his background, then we can sort of go into where we've gone together.
Yeah. So great to meet you, and so excited to do this. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, but trying my best here. But I met Josh and Kirk almost 5 years ago now. And I grew up in LA. I grew up in Hollywood. Big Hollywood and small Hollywood, but I was able to learn a lot from my father, who's a very accomplished screenwriter. He's wrote movies like Forrest Gump, Benjamin Button, Star is Born, The Insider, Dune. So he's done all right. And I was able to learn a lot about the creative side about making movies. What goes into production, what goes into, what goes into, hiring the best people, hiring the best crew, all those different types of things. I worked for a lot of directors. I worked for a guy named David Fincher. I worked for Darren Aronofsky for a little bit, and I worked for a woman named Agnieszka Holland, who's an amazing Polish director. But what I was able to learn from that was mostly creative things. But really meeting Josh and Kirk, expanded my business sense and financial sense and understand. Like I joke, like I really didn't know what equity or debt meant. I didn't know the difference. I didn't know what a loan actually meant or what interest meant. And I think in the past 5 years, getting to connect with Josh and Kirk, not only have we formed, a brotherhood, but I think that sense of how do you structure a business. And I was in Miami talking to some students last week that if you want to be in the movie business, like it is art and commerce, and I think a lot of people forget that. And so learning that was huge for me because I've now become creative, I hope, on the creative side, but also the business side as well. And we, I think some things that we'll talk about today, how we're getting creative to put together films and structure films and all that type of stuff is really unique and really cool and stuff that I think a lot of Hollywood isn't doing necessarily.
Very interesting. So tell me, so you guys, you mentioned Snap Nurse, Josh. So Kirk, you guys started that, and that was obviously a very big. I think it's a rebranded now into a different company, Snap. It still has Snap on it.
It's called Snap Care now. But yeah,
Okay.
the founding CEO Sheree Kloss, she had an amazing vision for the company and put together a strong team, and we were part of that founding team that pushed it to the limit. And it was all the same thing we're doing and carrying it over into what we're doing now. It's there's no days off. Every day is a work day, and it's about the grind, and it's about pushing and really just doing more than other people do and going a little bit further and being that outlying 1%, where most people are taking the day off or the afternoon off. And not that we work 24/7, but there's always a sense of urgency. There's always a sense of making it to the next level and outdoing somebody. And that's what we did back. Sorry to get off topic there, but that's what Snap Nurse did. It was essentially an Uber for nurses, if you will, for lack of a better analogy. And we were able to really dominate during when the country was under duress and needed the help of the nurses, and we were able to really supply something that really mattered. So it was really gratifying just to help the country out, but at the same time, to create a really successful business that scaled just tremendously at the same time. But and then along the way meeting Alec, and not to say the same things Josh said, but we found somebody that we had a very kindred spirit, even though we came from two different worlds and from creative and he's saying he became a businessman. I think I might have actually become slightly creative, and I say slightly, very slightly, but
For sure.
just being around him and creating what we've created, which we'll get in further, the beautiful project that he wrote and directed, and some other projects we did together, but also what we're creating from a business standpoint too. It's fun to make movies and it's very exciting, but it's also fun to create a business around that entertainment space that you can really be proud of and really, increase the value for your stockholders is most important.
So yeah, let's dive into that. So please share a little bit about this new business that you created around entertainment. It's funny, it's show business, the movie, it is a business. But tell me a little bit what you guys have created, what it is, how it works, and why it's so unique.
Yeah, it's been a unique journey for us because we got into the business at a really changing and challenging time. The first ever actor that we were able to get onto a project was Al Pacino. So we started off in a big way, and Alec has a great story of how we were ultimately able to bring him on board to play a leading role in Billy Knight, which was our first movie where we all came together. We actually started that in 2022. And as we completed that movie and looked at the landscape of film and entertainment and, the idea that we wanted to build another billion-dollar company and to do it together, at that point, we started looking to broaden the company's reach and to produce more projects and ultimately to get into the distribution space so that we're a company where you can be, essentially a one-stop shop. Somebody can show up with a script or an idea, and we can take it all the way from the idea phase to the ultimate customer. And so we're in the process of building out the distribution phase, which is in a changing landscape coming off the strikes that occurred in 2023 for writers and actors and shifts in streaming and all those sort of things. But to Kirk's earlier point, we're, being as creative as we can in terms of how we set up projects, how we finance projects, and then how we market and ultimately drive revenue and profit from those projects.
So in layman's terms, if you're listening to this, if you could just lay out, like, what does it usually look like, a Hollywood kind of like movie business, and then yours, and contrast the two, that makes it a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, I just to give a good sense of what Josh is saying, so within the business, you have production companies that go and make movies, right? What we started off, Firebrand started off as saying, okay, let's raise capital, let's go make a movie, let's get Al Pacino and other people to be in that movie. What we learned, and we ended up making 2 more movies. What we learned is the landscape is shifting from a distribution standpoint, where that's where you see movies, right? So Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, wherever you see it, or in the theaters. What we saw is that a lot of the distribution companies are, while they are doing a decent job getting movies out, they're not marketing movies in the best way. They're not being smart about the way that they take films to the customer. And, with Josh and Kirk's background from Snap Nurse and working with some really incredible people there, that's sort of what they did to, one of the best companies in the country doing that. And so we felt like there's an opportunity in this business to really attack that element of it, is how do you get a movie out to people? So that's something that we are really focusing on. But at the same time, how do you raise more money to go make more movies? And that's stuff that we're able to sort of leverage in the distribution space as well. Is, as you start to stack capital, as I learned, you can really be flexible in the way that you're where you're putting it and how you're kind of going about structuring your business. So that's kind of, in layman's terms, the difference between going and making a movie and then getting it out to the world. And now we're venturing into getting it out to the world part, which most production companies don't do, So anyways, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, because it's almost like a lot of people promoted in the past. They promoted movies through just TV, right? The in theater soon, that kind of thing, like with the clips and kind of stuff. But how many people? I mean, if you look at the people watching TV, nobody watches TV.
Yeah, I mean, social media is dominating. I mean, there's TikTok and Instagram, and Josh and Kirk and some of our team has done started to really understand the dynamics of that and the data of that. And learn. And I think what's smart, what Josh and Kirk have really said is like, we have to take our time. We have to understand the marketplace, as good as you can, because I think there's a lot of people are like, oh, let's get into distribution. Let's buy as much as we can and try and get stuff out and market but really understanding, like, how do you market? How do you, that's why I think we've done a really amazing job of connecting with young people, going to these schools. We're doing this college tour. We're trying to connect with people at the ground level, doing podcasts, doing all that type of stuff. So anyways, I'll shut up, but I think that's sort of the idea,
Yeah. One way to look at it is kind of in the producer world or in making a film, it's a lot of job by job, project by project type stuff. And so a normal producer comes along and produces a movie and then sort of hands it off to distribution, and the investors that are in that movie hopefully come out okay, and on to the next one. And it's a lot of segmented pieces of the market and also segmented investment structures. And so what we've tried to do, especially given the background we have with our investors, is give them an exposure to a lot of projects, give them exposure to a larger company as a going concern, and do everything we can to take a project and be able to see it through all the way to the end. And that's where, from production to distribution to marketing comes in and is, at least in our vision, going to be a consolidated approach that is very good for our investors.
So just if we can focus on the players that's involved too, because a lot of our viewers and listeners might you see big studios involved with it. So in the movie business, it's a project, it's a screenplay that you write, you raise capital for it, you make the movie, and then it goes to the big studios for distribution. Or how does is that kind of the flow? And am I missing other key players? Just to give our audience a little bit of a context of, hey, the landscape. Here's all the players in this market.
Yeah. You may make a movie for a couple $1,000,000 and Netflix may give you a bunch of money to own it, and that's most people's dream scenario, but that isn't a very high percentage. So if Netflix or Amazon or Paramount doesn't acquire a project, it usually goes to a smaller distributor, which a lot of great companies in that space. We just feel like if you are the producer and the distributor, which is similar to the big studios and to small, it's not like we're the only one doing it, but we hope to do it in a smart way, that it is a better sort of consolidated structure for an investor than to sort of build a project and hope to find a home for it.
Yeah, it's a mini studio model. I mean, for us, obviously, like, these bigger studios have been producing and distributing for many years, but I think for us, just trying to figure out how to do it in a different way. A24 is a big player. They started out as a distribution company. They started out on the other side and then decided to start producing. Neon, sort of similar. They were kind of really a huge player in the international game in terms of distribution, and then started producing. So we're kind of, on the other side, producing, wanting to get into distribution. But yeah.
Gotcha. So occasionally you see, like, I'm just thinking now, like Netflix signs a particular writer or an actor or something to make a movie. Then they produce, obviously that's a Netflix production, and they distribute it on their platform, right?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. But before we move on, there was a teaser there of, how Alec got Al Pacino for your first movie. So I can't let that go. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I obviously, with my dad being in the business for a long time, there's been a sort of, surrounding of agents and representatives and all sorts of people. But, I think there was an element of like, I really don't care about sending cold emails. I don't care about sort of bothering people no matter who it is. And I think, I'm sure I've annoyed a lot of people and they never want to talk to me again. But with Al, I had this script and I was trying to get things made, and with Josh and Kirk coming, into my world, and their confidence in wanting to make this, you start to look at actors that you want. And excuse me, I had been writing this screenplay with him in mind, Pacino, and lucky enough, I knew his agent, and I bothered the shit out of him, and really started sending him emails and saying, hey, would Al be interested in reading this? Finally, Josh Lieberman, a great agent, he said, yeah, let me send it to him. Al read it and read one of the first drafts and fell in love with it. So I was I was completely blessed. But then it took 8 months of reworking and rewriting, and that's sort of Pacino's process from a creative level is, you got to get it right, at least with his parts, and I think he really focused on a lot of the elements that his character was, and wanted me to leave me up to kind of work on the other elements. But we worked for a long time, and then unfortunately he said no to the project after about 6-7 months. So we were kind of like, whoa, that's a setback. And then we went out to some other people and stuff like that. But after 2-3 months of doing that, I had connected with his significant other, who became a producer on the project, and I had reached out thanks to Josh. Josh said, Alec, you should reach out to Pacino to get lunch, because I had never. Everything was over email. Everything was, maybe some Zooms, I think, or not even Zooms, but calls. And so I emailed him, and right away when I emailed him, his partner, she emailed me back and said, have you cast the role yet? And I said, no, not yet. Why? She goes, I think Al wants to do it. And that was life-changing. You can imagine my face with that text message. And then the amazing thing was,
Alec, tell him about, this is so key in the story. Tell him you went and met him at the most Hollywoodish type setting in person for the first time, and we were talking on the phone, all of us, before the meeting, and how nervous you were because you're going to meet the legendary Al Pacino, right? Nobody gets to do that.
Yeah, I mean, for my whole life, I had met some really amazing people, but all through the guise of my father. I was sort of in the background, in the shadows, and this is the first time really I'm going to meet, someone who's going to change my life, and it's mine. It's not my dad's anymore, which I think was really wonderful. But I went to go meet Al at the Polo Lounge, which, if anybody listening, is a very famous restaurant in Los Angeles, and it's at the Beverly Hills Hotel. It's very Hollywood. To me, it's one of the places that like keeps that sort of old Hollywood sense. And it's so classic and so cool. And I'm sitting at the bar. There's no one there. It's like morning, like really early morning for breakfast. And all of a sudden I just hear him in the lobby. Like you can't even imagine. And he comes and you just hear his voice, and he comes and he sits down, and there's no one there. And there's a piano in the middle of the restaurant. And he starts playing the piano to like nobody, almost just playing it for me, even though he would acknowledge me. Anyways, we met, we had breakfast. We had an incredible breakfast. We didn't even really talk about the movie at all. We just talked about life. And at the end of it, he said, I think I want to make your movie, which was amazing. And then the crazy thing was I came home that night, and Josh, Kirk, and I were sharing a place together because we were, trying to put together this movie. And they are from, Josh obviously living in Atlanta now, Kirk in Texas. They wanted a place in LA. And so we shared a place, and they came home, and we started watching a show called The Offer, which is a show about making The Godfather. And the episode that we're watching that same night, there's a scene where Francis Ford Coppola goes to the Beverly Hills Hotel, goes to the Polo Lounge, and is there to meet a 30-year-old Al Pacino to convince him to be in The Godfather. And there was like this surrealness of like, okay, oh my God, we have to make this movie. We got to go do it. And we weren't there completely with everything, all the elements that we needed to make it, in terms of capital, in terms of crew, in terms of all those things. And he had said yes, and I think July of 2022, and then we were shooting in October of 2022, which in like Hollywood movie world is, almost suicide. It's really intense. So we had to go make this movie in about 4 months or so, but when Al Pacino says yes to being in a movie, you go make that movie. So that's the story, and there's other elements to it, but yeah, that's sort of the high view story behind getting Al Pacino to be in the film.
Let's talk about the side from the business and investing. Like, why is this attractive? Why is getting involved in the movie business attractive for investors, and then obviously you guys as a business?
Yeah, well, there's a number of ways to make it attractive, and like any other investment, you have to find a way to come up with a good structure and to have a great alignment of interest between the project and investors. And Kirk and I, having worked with a lot of the same investors for going on a decade now, really have a familial connection. One of our partners, Tuan Bowie, has been instrumental in really everything we've done, and from Snap Nurse to we've drilled oil and gas wells together, and anything and everything in between. And so coming into the film world, obviously we want to build equity in our company, but there's a number of other motivating factors, from tax credits to tax write-offs, those sort of things that impact an investor's interest level and motivation. And so both of those things are possible. The most known structure is around the state level tax credits, which a lot of states like where I am, Georgia and Florida, Ohio, Louisiana, compete for having great packages to draw productions there. And then, if you spend $1 million, your production may end up with a $250,000 tax credit that you sell to somebody in Georgia who needs to save 200 grand on their taxes. And so that's a tried and true approach that's been going on for a long time. There's also ways to save on your federal taxes, and that's obviously attractive to a lot of investors. And in that case, it's a structure where you position an investor where they can hopefully get an X factor on the write-off they get, and also position them for an active income tax savings. And so if you put a few of those different pieces together, you start getting down the road of having a movie that's financed and heading in the right direction.
So this is Section 181 of the U.S. Tax Code, right? Which provides for immediate deduction of 100% of qualified production costs. So
that's correct.
The big play here is it is an investment. You're investing, so you're not looking. It's not the tax tail wagging the dog. You're leading. You have a business, and you're looking to make a profit and generate profits. So that's the big. Attraction number one. But attraction number two is, from a tax standpoint, if you're putting a structure together, there is provisions in the U.S. tax code that allows for significant tax advantages, with regards to production costs of these movies, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And so under Section 181, you can write off up to $15 million on a specific project. And so in the case of, say you have a movie that costs $5 million, you're in a position where an investor could put in anywhere from $1 to $2 million, get some ownership in the project, and then also be in a position to write off the entire $5 million. So a lot of high income investors, that's a very powerful tax savings. And you also get savings in the future, you get ownership in the project too. So as it goes forward, and if it's a big hit, you've saved a bunch on taxes. You own part of a project that could be producing revenue for years to come, and you're in a position to roll that strategy forward as you strategize with us, which is a unique team that can handle all parts of the production and distribution, but also advise you on a CFO level, on a tax level, and on a legal level to some extent.
Okay, so on the front end, you're investing in a business, and this is all. I'm assuming every single project is its own entity, right? Corporate formation, entity, and so forth. So you're an owner in that. So there's an equity play there, which then allows you to access some of the tax advantages on the U.S. tax code. But because you have that equity in there and you're an owner of the project, well, you get to have other fun stuff too, because there's opening nights and red carpet events, probably, I'm assuming, that kind of stuff. But then also it may be one of those movies where you get to collect payment on that for quite a while, right? Isn't it? There's also somebody said to me the one time too, and this is, again, your say, so fact check me on this, please. you're the movie guys. But something like a movie like Swingers was very low production, that kind of. But those guys are, I mean, people are still getting paid from that movie because it kind of became like a classic, for over a section of the population, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, any of those. Oh, go ahead, Alec.
No, go ahead.
Any of those big movies that you see over and over and over and over are still sending royalties to somebody out there. So, yeah, that's obviously what every filmmaker or TV maker wants is a syndication or a project just to live forever and always be on when you're flipping through it. And we all have our favorites that, even though cable TV's a thing of the past, even though when we go through the guide on whatever platform we use, I know there's always a couple that I see. I'm like, I'm going to watch it right now, right? I mean, every single time, without a doubt, I'm leaving it on there, even with my wife's sigh in the background, But yeah, a couple other things on the tax code, the 181 piece is, it does call for an active producing level for the investor. So to the extent that somebody has interest in the space and has interest from a standpoint of being to have a tax burden that year that they want to write off federally, they have the ability to jump in. They have the ability to write off a certain amount of taxes. They also become, and like you said, they have an equity piece in the project as well. But they now also become an active producer, and they have an active producer role. And so that allows them, if they had any interest in the space, to actually watch what happens on a daily basis, because they're going to be involved in meetings. They're going to be involved in the daily footage that's shot. They're going to be involved in the pre-production and the post-production. So there's a lot of really cool things that come with an investment like this. And the people that do take this find it very entertaining, I think, as well. And like the other perks, like you said, there's all kinds of red carpets and opening nights, and it's kind of nonstop when it comes to that. You can have as much as you want, or as little as needed to take the tax write off.
And one thing I want to add on just quickly, because it goes back to your first question about investing in this business. I think one of the things that Josh and Kirk really saw was how creative you can get, and I think we're doing things, especially in the indie model. You can back up a lot of your equity. You can back up debt through foreign sales. So basically, when you cast an actor, you're able to go pre-buy around the world based off of who your cast is, based off of sort of who's making the movie, and protects a lot of money that way. So there's a lot of times where people are like, oh, they just see the box office numbers and they're like, that movie didn't make any money, but it's not necessarily true, because a lot of times they've already backed it up with foreign pre-sales, and they've already made a lot of their money back, or they financed part of the movie through those foreign pre-sales. So there's that element. There's, what we're getting creative with is obviously the 181 structure. We got creative with how we put together Billy Knight. But one of the things that I think is really interesting that Josh and I and Kirk, really looked at is something called the EB5 structure, which, is obviously allowing foreign individuals and foreign investors to invest a certain amount of capital to be able to obtain visas for their family and for themselves and for their families. And, that structure is normally used on hotels and architecture and all sorts of different things. And, talking to a lot of the lawyers that we've been talking to in terms of the EB5 structure, very rarely has it been done in film. It's done a couple of times, but for us, what we're doing is putting together a large structure to be able to create more jobs in the United States, because every visa that's written, you have to create about 10 jobs. So that's something that we are definitely looking for people that are interested in coming in and obtaining a visa and a better path to citizenship. So that's something that I think is really creative. Like, that's something that most production companies or distribution companies aren't looking to do, and we're not trying to spill our secrets, but I think that's sort of an element that allows for, when you come into this business and you're like, oh, okay, it's the movie business, I'm going to lose all my money. It's just not necessarily true, and I think we want to buck that sort of idea, that there is a lot of creative ways to make a lot of money in this business, and a lot of ways to protect your money, and obviously the tax incentives are huge. So, and using that 181 structure like Firebrand is doing, I think is finding those things and learning how to actually activate it on too. Because there's a lot of producers in Hollywood are like, oh, the 181, but they don't have a lawyer like Josh to be able to actually help with that. They don't have a CFO like Kirk to be able to understand it and be able to utilize a lot of those things. So I think we're a perfect team to be able to do that as well, you know?
Right. And that was going to be one of my next question is how does this, how does it go wrong, obviously, and how does this fail? And you did already answer some of that. I mean, you can make a movie and it doesn't do well and makes any money, right? That's kind of that's kind of the obvious answer. Are there other ways, just from a risk management standpoint, and other risks that you guys have to be cognizant of and manage?
Yeah, I mean, I personally do think there's a lot of investors who have gotten into a lot of bigger projects, actually some studio projects, where they're so far down the waterfall they don't even know. And if you don't know the business and you don't really understand that, then that can be hard to kind of locate, in my opinion.
Yep.
From an independent level, if you're making smart decisions, and really, I think what Josh, looked at is also the distribution element of it, especially because the world is changing so much. If you're just producing a movie, and it goes to theaters, the theaters take their money, then the distribution company takes their money, and then there's agents in between there. There's all sorts of different factors that you're all of a sudden slowly kind of falling down that. But if you don't know that, it's very hard to, you'll get in there and it's a movie and it's great and it's Hollywood and this and that, but there's real business and ways to make money. And I think Josh and Kirk have done such an amazing job of knowing the business and understanding it and understanding how people have made money. That's my answer. I mean, Josh or Kirk, I don't know if you guys have other feelings in terms of where it could all go wrong.
Yeah, I mean the risk, at least starting from the tax strategy, is largely on does the project ever achieve distribution? That's your main risk in not getting your write off if you fund a production and it's never released, which strangely happens more than you might expect. Then that's a real problem because you're out your money and you're out your write off. That's where, to Alec's point, having the team that we have, which is unique, and having a distribution capability make that risk, essentially zero, because we can find some home for almost anything, even if it's on YouTube or whatnot. And so that's a big risk. And then the nice thing about the 181 structure is your risk in terms of returns is sort of complementary to your write-off. So if you don't get a big return or the project's a dud, which can happen, you don't have any recapture down the road, and you probably saved on a cash basis from a tax standpoint, and you have some amount of residual income coming in. The other risk, which is a great risk, is that the project does incredibly well. And, if you invest in Forrest Gump with Alec's dad, you're probably still getting a pretty big check. He's got a bigger mailbox just to even hold the checks that come in from that thing. So, you get some hits like that. We have a partner, Peter Morgan, who produced American Sniper and Identity Thief and some other big hits like that. And it's the same deal. 10 years later, you're still getting a pretty healthy check, and that could continue for decades. And so any sort of outcome along those range of possibilities could occur. But if you put together the right talent and the right structure, the right budget, and try to market it correctly, then hopefully the odds are in our favor that you're going to win more often than not.
Yep. Any other aspect that you guys think we should, you just wanted to quickly discuss or share with my listeners and viewers that we have not talked about or discussed?
I have one, and then I'll let Josh and Kirk finish.
Okay.
I'm sure they have others, but I just want to talk about the AI piece because I'm sure there's a lot of investors that are interested.
That's a very good piece. Yep.
And I think one of the things that from our company is as long as we stay by the guidelines of what the guilds are requiring, we're definitely adopters of it. We think it's really interesting. We think it's where it can be used valuable. I've seen a lot of business minds like Mark Cuban and a lot of people have talked about sort of that this sector is going to be completely sort of wiped out. And I just disagree because filmmaking at the core of it is, in my opinion, a human thing. But at the same time, these tools that AI are they're being implemented and are so, valuable to allow for people's jobs to be a lot easier and a lot, I actually think it can create more jobs. I think a lot of people, if they can adopt it and understand it, it could actually be such a tool that you have almost AI artists that are being used on these films on a grand scale. And I do think that, you know, the guilds are putting in certain protections so that you have those artists, but they're only amplifying, they're not taking away certain things. So that's the beauty of it. And I do think films at the core of it are really a human experience. And so, you know, the AI can only really amplify it instead of replace it, in my opinion. So I just want, you know, people to understand that we are adopting it and we are using it. We are proponents of it, as long as it's put in the right framework, and being used in a valuable way. So that's one thing I wanted to mention, so that people aren't like, well, the movie was going to be dead because of AI. And it's like, it's not. It's just going to be, it's going to look a little bit differently, and we're going to adopt it, and hopefully it can continue to get better, and filmmakers can use it in a really valuable way. So just wanted to add that part.
Great.
Yeah, and then, you know, on the financial structure side, we've talked about a few different strategies, but another one that's interesting that we're exploring is there's a really open opportunity to be a lender in the space. A lot of projects are funded with equity or pre-sales, a lot of the things we've talked about here. Strangely, there's not a lot of debt providers that are willing to, you know, take a little risk in terms of projects that are working on getting distribution or being finished. And those projects to us are a real opportunity, because you can get first in line to be repaid. You can get a great interest rate. You can get a credit. You can get some ownership. You can really write your own ticket. And so we're working with some investors to structure some debt opportunities, because it's a great way for people to get their feet wet in the industry, and to also work with us as we are in a position to use a debt structure to acquire projects for distribution and get things out to the world. So that's another piece of the puzzle that we're looking to put together.
Awesome. Kirk, any other thoughts that you wanted to add?
I don't think so. I think that covers it. Yeah, we're kind of a finance house, with legal and creative arms, and you know, it's what drives every industry. And so with all these different levers we can pull on our projects, and from debt to the tax advantages to even equity positions, and selling off tax credits at the state level to and internationally to, you know, mitigate the risk on the project. But then we take it forward, and we have, you know, the creative minds like Alec and his team that really bless these projects to make sure we do it within a way that it makes financial sense as we bounce it off all of our different brains. And then the distribution piece, which allows us to go ahead and take it to market, and also reduce the distribution cost that most production companies would have to pay. So that actually goes straight to the bottom line to our investors as well. So we really try to be an all-in-one shop, and really make the most for our, not just the projects, but the company, you know, stockholders as well.
Awesome. Guys, where can my listeners and viewers follow you? Where can they stay informed of all the many projects that you're involved with, and all of everything related to the movie business?
Yeah, that's a great question, and also a good tee off for you know, some of the fun things that we're doing. You know, you can follow us on Instagram at Firebrand Media. On I think it's just at Firebrand Media Group. Our most interesting social media component is at Billy Knight Movie, or is it at Billy Knight Film? What is it?
At Billy Knight Movie. Yeah.
At Billy Knight Movie. So, you know, just to kind of take all this more abstract discussion about finances and structuring and all that sort of thing and make it real, you know, Alec started the call with talking about Al Pacino and getting him into Billy Knight. And after several years and a few ups and downs along the way of driving that project forward, we have the movie complete. And so, you know, now that you have a film in hand, like we do, with a huge cast that includes Al Pacino, Charlie Heaton from Stranger Things, Diana Silvers, who's been in a ton of stuff, is basically young Julia Roberts, Angela Serafin, Sarah Sampao, Rick Ross, Beck, Diplo, all sorts of people in the movie. We're out there rolling it out into the world. And so just yesterday, we launched a short film contest, which would allow young filmmakers or creatives or just even people who like to make reels to submit a piece that would actually go into the movie, because the protagonist in the movie is a young struggling filmmaker. So kind of like one of us on the call, maybe at one time in his life. So anyway, that's kind of an example of the fun things that we're doing. And so we're taking that contest. We're getting a bus that'll be wrapped in all of our movie, art and so forth with our characters and going around the country. And so if any listeners are part of a college or university or a high school or, maybe a middle school, we got a couple of cuss words in there, but we'd love to hear from people because we'd like to set up a tour stop. Last week, Alec came into the University of Miami where he went to school and talked to the business course about the business of film and the business of TV. So all those things, we're looking to get really creative in how we release our movies and get them out to the world. And we're doing that across the board. We have a project with number one draft pick Cam Ward that'll be coming out hopefully in the next couple of months on Tubi and Fox Sports and a number of fun things behind that. So we'd encourage all of your listeners, viewers to follow Billy Knight Movie, follow Firebrand Media Group, and also to just reach out to us, call us, DM us, text us, whatever, because we're open for business and we'd love to collaborate on our tour or really anything else that somebody thinks is interesting.
Awesome. Fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights and your knowledge and just providing so much value to all of my listeners and viewers.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, MC.
Absolutely. We'll keep you posted from as we release stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
And thank you to all of my listeners and my viewers for, again, spending your most valuable resource, your time, once again with me on the show today. Everything Cashflow Ninja is at cashflowninja.com. We've got over 1,000 podcast episodes. There's 4 books, there's reports, there's webinars, and much, much more, all at cashflowninja.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the number one newsletter in the alternative wealth strategy and alternative asset investing space, the Wealth Dojo. You can subscribe to the Wealth Dojo by going to cashflowninja.com/subscribe. Until next time, live infinitely. This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. The information being presented and considered does not consider your particular financial objectives or situation, and it does not make personalized recommendations. This material is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified tax and legal advisor or other qualified professionals, and you should not use the information in place of a customized consultation with a licensed professional regarding your specific personal financial objectives, situation, and needs. We believe the information provided is reliable, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, timeliness, or completeness.